I was standing in my son's hallway with 2 grocery bags cutting into my fingers while Bass shook the walls and some girl laughed upstairs. And all I could think was, where is Leah? I stepped into the living room and saw empty bottles, white powder smeared on my coffee table, and a sealed pill bottle with my daughter-in-law's name sitting in a ring of beer. The neighbor told me they took her out in an ambulance 2 nights earlier while my boy stayed home throwing parties and bringing in more girls. In that moment, my heart broke in 2, but something inside me also went ice cold. They thought they were using my house, my money, my love like always, but they had no idea what I was about to do next. Friends, before we dive into this story, I want to ask for a small favor. If you connect with what I'm sharing, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Tell me in the comments which country and city you're watching from, so I know where my story is reaching. Now, let me tell you exactly how I destroyed my son's comfortable little world to save the woman he was supposed to protect. I push the door with my shoulder because my hands are aching from the weight of the grocery bags, and the second it creaks open, the base hits me like a punch. The walls shake, the floor vibrates, and someone upstairs laughs so loud it sounds fake, like she's performing for an audience. I stand there in the hallway, the smell of weed and cheap liquor rolling over me, and all I can think is, where is Leah? Why isn't she here answering the phone? My fingers go numb around the bags, but I don't set them down yet. I take 1 step into the living room, and the scene looks like a nightmare. Bottles everywhere, sticky cups on the carpet, white powder smeared across my coffee table like someone wiped it fast. And right in the middle, a prescription bottle with Leah's name on it, sealed, untouched, sitting in a puddle of beer like trash. My throat tightens as I look around, trying to connect the dots, trying to make sense of the noise and the mess, and the fact that my daughter-in-law hasn't texted me back in days. The music is so loud my chest vibrates, but underneath it I feel something else. Fear, sharp and sudden, telling me something is very wrong. I'm still staring at that pill bottle when I hear someone behind me clear his throat. I turn to see the neighbor from across the hall, clutching his laundry basket like he's afraid to walk past the doorway. His face is tight with worry, and he steps closer, only after checking that no one inside is paying attention. "Miss Renee," he says, lowering his voice. "They took her out in an ambulance 2 nights ago. She looked real bad. He ain't been with her. He just been partying." His words sink in slow, like my brain refuses to hold them. "Ambulance?" I ask, but my voice comes out thin, like I already know the answer. He nods, looking guilty for even telling me. "Your boy hasn't left this house except to get more liquor. Those girls been coming and going. I thought you might not know." My lips go dry. I thank him because I don't know what else to do, and when he disappears down the stairs, I finally let the grocery bags drop. Something cold settles in my stomach as I step farther inside, trying to understand how my son could be here, drowning in noise, while his wife was somewhere fighting for breath. I walk deeper into the townhouse, moving slow because every corner shows me something worse. There are unpaid bills stacked by the door, envelopes torn open but ignored. A shut-off notice for the heat sits on top, and I feel embarrassed reading it, like the house itself is shaming me for helping pay for a place my son wouldn't bother to take care of. The kitchen sink is overflowing with dishes, mold creeping along the tile, and there's a calendar on the fridge covered in scribbles. I run my hand over the date Leah collapsed. Her doctor appointment scratched out and replaced with "Boys' Night," written in big, proud letters. My breath catches. I press my palm against the cold fridge door, trying to steady myself, but all I feel is anger building under my ribs. Anger at Marcus. Anger at myself for defending him so many times. Anger at this stupid house that smells like everything Leah deserved better than. I move into the bedroom, pushing clothes aside with my foot, and it hits me that she must have been sick for longer than she admitted. The room feels abandoned, like she disappeared and no one noticed. My chest tightens so sharply I have to lean against the dresser to breathe. The music from downstairs thumps through the ceiling, shaking dust loose, and I picture her lying somewhere in a hospital bed while my son laughs and drinks and pretends none of this is his fault. The rage rises again, hot and choking, but tangled with guilt so heavy it almost bends me in half. I don't know how long I stand there, staring at nothing, before I hear a bottle shatter somewhere downstairs and a girl scream with laughter. That sound snaps something in me. I leave the bedroom and walk back through the townhouse with one thought pounding in my chest. I cannot stay here. I need to find Leah. I grab my purse, my keys, and step over the mess like I'm stepping over a grave. The grocery bags lie open on the floor, apples rolling out onto the carpet, but I don't pick them up. I don't even look back. As I shut the door behind me, the bass rattles the hallway railing, and it feels like I'm sealing myself out of my own failure. The elevator ride down is slow, each floor buzzing past while I try to hold myself together. My hands shake so hard I can barely hit the button for the garage. Part of me still hopes Marcus will come running out behind me, saying he made a mistake, saying he's scared too. But the truth sits heavy on my chest. He isn't worried. He isn't even present. When I reach my car, I toss my purse onto the passenger seat and grip the steering wheel with both hands, trying to calm the tremor in my jaw. For a second, I just sit there, inhaling the smell of my own car, my own life, a world where things make sense. And then I start the engine. As I pull out of the garage, something inside me hardens, not into hate, not yet, but into a truth I can't unsee. I'm not just a mother walking into a hospital. I'm a woman choosing who I'm going to protect. And for the first time, that choice isn't Marcus. It's Leah. It's me. It's the part of my heart that refuses to pretend anymore. By the time my car reaches the street, I know exactly where I'm going and exactly what I'm leaving behind. I pushed open the ICU door slowly, half expecting someone to stop me, but nobody even looked up. The room was quiet except for the hum of machines and the soft beeping of something keeping track of Leah's heartbeat. My eyes landed on her, and my body froze. She looked nothing like herself. Her skin was gray, stretched thin over her bones, and she was surrounded by wires and tubes like someone had tried to patch her together. I stepped in, the smell of antiseptic hitting me in the face so hard I nearly gagged. It was sharp and sterile, nothing like the thick, sour air back at Marcus's house. I sat in the plastic chair next to her bed and reached for her hand. It was cold and limp, and it scared me more than anything I've ever felt. I leaned close and whispered, "Leah, it's Renee. Baby, squeeze my hand if you can hear me." Nothing. Just the beeping. I stayed there a minute, eyes locked on her face, watching for any twitch, any sign. But she didn't move. My stomach felt like it had dropped through the floor. I wasn't even crying. I was too angry, too ashamed. I stood up to breathe, stepped out into the hallway, then made my way to the waiting room down the hall. I sat in one of those stiff chairs that don't let you rest, just make you more aware of your body, and rubbed my hands over my face. My phone buzzed. Family group chat. Marcus. At the hospital. Haven't left her side. I just stared at the screen. I read it twice. Haven't left her side. My fingers tightened around the phone. Another buzz. This time, a notification from Instagram. Someone was going live. I tapped it without thinking, still numb, still off balance. And there he was, my son, Marcus, standing on my damn coffee table, shirtless, holding a bottle of tequila in one hand, a girl with long red braids in his lap. She laughed and leaned into him, and behind them, a balloon banner read, "Boys' Night In." My hands went ice cold. I watched the video in silence, heart pounding, the edges of my vision dark. I didn't say anything out loud. I just felt something tear inside me. Not snap. Tear, slow and painful. Like a line I'd held onto my whole life, my job as a mother, was breaking. Right then, I knew something had changed in me for good. I walked outside the hospital. Not fast, not angry, just clear. Like my body was moving on instinct, but my mind had gone still. I found a quiet corner of the parking garage and pulled out my phone. I called the non-emergency police line, gave them the address of the house, and said, "There's an out-of-control party going on in my property. There are drugs and underage girls. The owner is Marcus Coleman. I need it shut down." My voice didn't even shake. Then I hung up and called Patrice. I didn't even wait for her to say hello before I said, "I need you to start the paperwork. I want the house transferred to Leah's name only. I want power of attorney for her medical care. And I want every account my name is tied to frozen right now, not tomorrow, now." Patrice said my name, tried to ask me what was going on, but I just repeated it. Now. After I hung up, I leaned back against the concrete wall and looked up at the sky. I felt nothing. No tears. Just this tightness in my chest that wouldn't let up. I had done what needed to be done. And I wasn't done yet. Back inside, I stopped by Leah's room again. She was still unconscious, still caught in that in-between space. I sat back down beside her, held her hand again, and whispered, "I'm here, baby. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." I watched her chest rise and fall in tiny, shallow movements. I thought about all the times I looked the other way when Marcus raised his voice, all the times I brushed off Leah's tired eyes or her too thin frame as stress or work or just a cold. I should have known. I did know. I just didn't let myself believe it. Because believing it meant admitting my son had become someone I didn't recognize. That the boy I raised with so much love was capable of this kind of selfish cruelty. I sat there thinking about all the years I tried to fix things for him, cover for him, save him from consequences. And where did that get us? Here, him partying, her half dead, and me sitting between them, forced to choose. The worst part wasn't the party, or the lie. It was that I believed him. Even when Leah got sick, even when she started fading right in front of us, I still gave Marcus the benefit of the doubt. He's under pressure. He's still young. He'll grow out of it. I carried those excuses around like armor, but now they felt like chains. Every time I bailed him out or sent him money or defended him to his cousins, I thought I was being a good mother. But I wasn't being a good anything. I was being a coward. Afraid to admit he'd stopped being the kind of man I could be proud of. Afraid to look Leah in the eye and say, "You were right about him." I looked at her pale face, the bruises on her arms where they'd tried to get IVs in, and I made myself a promise. If she survives, I will never let him near her again. I will protect her the way I should have from the beginning. By the time the sun went down and the room darkened, I knew something in me had turned a corner. I was still scared. Scared Leah might not wake up. Scared of what the family would say when they found out what I'd done. But I wasn't scared of losing Marcus anymore. That fear had always controlled me. The idea that cutting him off meant failing him as a mother. But sitting there, watching the machines keep Leah alive, I realized the real failure was letting him keep hurting people while I looked away. I stood up, kissed Leah's forehead, and whispered again, "I'm here." Then I walked out of the room, phone in hand, ready to burn down whatever I had to burn to keep her safe. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing. I wasn't covering for him ever again. I was on my knees in their bedroom, digging through dirty laundry piled high in the corner, looking for anything clean Leah could wear once they moved her to the step-down unit. The floor was cold, the carpet stiff under my legs, and the whole room smelled like mildew and old sweat. I kept pulling shirts and socks, shoving them aside, trying not to gag at the smell coming off some of the towels. I found a pair of leggings balled up under the bed and was reaching deeper when my hand hit something hard, flat and spiral-bound. I pulled it out, thinking it was maybe a journal or sketch pad, and wiped the dust off the cover with my sleeve. It was just a cheap notebook, blue and bent at the edges. I almost put it aside, but something told me to look. I opened the first page and saw Leah's handwriting, tight, rushed, like she'd been trying to get thoughts out faster than her hand could keep up. I started reading, and what I read stopped me cold. She'd listed bills, one after another, gas, water, electric, all months behind. There were notes about Marcus using her paycheck before she could even pay rent, about him lying and saying he'd paid things he hadn't. A line read, "Sold grandma's ring. Didn't ask. Said we needed it for his truck insurance." I flipped to another page. "Coughed blood for 3 nights. He said ER was too expensive. Told me to drink tea." My stomach turned. She wrote about hiding in the bathroom to cry because he'd get annoyed when she was too tired to cook. There were pages with dollar amounts and crossed-out budgets, lists of excuses he gave, promises he broke. And then there it was, in small, hesitant print. I tried to tell Renee, but she loves him too much. That one sentence made my throat close up. I had to sit back on my heels and breathe, just breathe, because if I let myself cry, I wasn't sure I'd stop. I'd missed this. Or maybe I hadn't missed it. I'd ignored it. I had chosen to believe in the version of Marcus I wanted to see, not the one Leah was living with. I kept flipping pages, and it got worse. She'd written about cold nights where the heat had been shut off, how she had to sleep in her coat because Marcus said it would be fixed next week. She'd taped a utility shut-off notice into the notebook like she was trying to prove to herself she wasn't crazy. I saw my own name too many times. Renee co-signed the truck. He said we'd pay her back. Gaming setup. Her birthday gift to him. He pawned it twice. She gave us grocery money and he bought sneakers. My chest burned, not just from guilt, but from shame. I thought I was helping. I thought I was being a good mother, a supportive one. But I wasn't helping. I was funding a fantasy while Leah was drowning. Every gift I gave him turned into a tool he used to climb over her. And I didn't just allow it. I made it easier. I backed him. I vouched for him. I told her he had a good heart, that he just needed time. I feel sick thinking about it now. I sat there in the middle of the mess, notebook in my lap, feeling like the floor had disappeared underneath me. I remembered the nights Marcus called asking for money and how quickly I said yes. I remembered the times Leah looked tired or distant, and I assumed she was just overwhelmed, not being mistreated. She never once complained outright, maybe because she knew I wouldn't really listen. I wanted to believe I was helping them build a life, but I see now I was helping him ruin hers. She was trying to survive, and I was standing next to the man who made her feel like survival was selfish. I thought about all the times I defended him to friends, to family, to Leah herself. And now I was holding the evidence that everything I said to protect him had left her more alone. I closed the notebook slowly, ran my fingers over the cover, and held it to my chest like it might ground me. It didn't. I felt like I'd swallowed a stone. I looked around the room again, at the clothes on the floor, the broken dresser drawer, the stained carpet. This was their reality. This was what she'd been living in while I was back in Chicago telling people my son was doing just fine. This wasn't about a wild party anymore. This wasn't about one mistake or one night. It was a pattern, a system. And I had helped build it. Maybe not on purpose. Maybe with the best intentions. But that didn't matter now. What mattered was that I saw it clearly, and I couldn't unsee it. Not anymore. I stood up, knees stiff and aching, and looked down at the notebook one more time. That little blue spiral wasn't just Leah's pain. It was a record of everything I refused to face. And now that I had, I knew what had to happen next. I wasn't going to beg Marcus to change. I wasn't going to cry and ask him why. I wasn't even going to explain myself to the rest of the family. I was going to tear it all down, the money, the access, the second chances, and build something different, something honest, even if I was the villain in their version of the story. Because I'd rather be the villain who saves Leah than the mother who stood silent while she wasted away. I slid the notebook into my purse, straightened my spine, and walked out of that room knowing that the next time Marcus looked at me, he wouldn't recognize who I'd become. And I was fine with that. I was finally fully fine with that. Patrice had just poured me a mug of coffee when I sat down at her kitchen table, the wood barely visible under the pile of folders, envelopes, and legal pads. The windows were cracked open, letting in some Georgia air, but it felt heavy in my chest. I was staring at the deed transfer paperwork, double-checking the signatures, when my phone lit up. Unknown number, Fulton County Jail. I froze. My hand hovered over the screen for a second, long enough for Patrice to look up from her laptop and raise an eyebrow. I didn't want to answer. I already knew who it was. But my thumb tapped the screen anyway, and I brought the phone to my ear. "You are receiving a call from an inmate at..." The robotic voice started. I closed my eyes. Then I heard him, Marcus, his voice echoing through the line. Too casual for someone calling from jail. "Ma, listen. It's not a big deal, all right? Just some BS from that party. And an old warrant. They blew it up for nothing. Just bail me out. I'll pay you back, I promise. I didn't speak. I just listened, my whole face burning, not with rage, though that was in there too, but with shame. My name is on that house, my name on the deed, my name on his emergency forms. Everyone at that jail had seen it. I felt small. He kept talking, rushing through excuses, trying to make it sound like a misunderstanding, like he'd been wronged. Ma, come on, you know I'm not some criminal. This is just a bad weekend, I just got caught up. You know how they are. I could almost see him pacing in the holding cell, pulling on that old charm that used to get him out of anything. Then came the line I knew was coming. Please, Ma, I need you. Just this one time. That phrase had been the soundtrack of my motherhood for years. Just this one time. It played every time he needed money, a place to stay, a lie covered. But this time, while I sat in Patrice's bright kitchen, my hands gripping the phone, another sound was louder. Leah's labored breathing in that hospital bed. My phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from the family group chat. Regina, how you gonna let your own child sit in jail, Renee? That's cold. Then another from Mama, a voicemail. I didn't even listen to it. I could guess. A good mother covers her child's shame. That's what she always said. I let him keep talking for another few seconds. They trying to charge me with possession or some nonsense, Ma. I didn't even do anything. Those weren't even my drugs. Just come get me out and we'll talk, okay? I could hear the desperation start to crack through the fake calm. His voice wavered. That used to be enough to pull me in, to make me feel guilty, like I was the one being cold. But this time it didn't hit the same. I finally opened my mouth and spoke, low and quiet so Patrice wouldn't hear. I'm not paying a dime, Marcus. The silence on the other end told me he hadn't expected that. Ma, what? Come on. You can't be serious. I hung up while he was still talking. My fingers shook a little when I ended the call, but I did it. I set the phone down on top of a manila envelope and looked at it like it had betrayed me. Then I pushed the whole thing away and leaned back in my chair. Patrice didn't say a word. She just reached over and gently refilled my coffee. My hands were trembling, but something inside me felt still for the first time in a long time. Not peaceful, not calm, just settled. Like the decision was finally made, and I didn't have to keep twisting myself into knots to justify it. I thought about all the times I covered for Marcus, all the lies I told myself and others to protect his image. I had called it love, called it loyalty. But it wasn't either of those things. It was fear. Fear of losing my only child. Fear of what it would mean to admit I'd raised someone who could treat people the way he treated Leah. Fear of being alone. But Leah was alone. Had been alone for months, maybe longer. And now I was the only one standing between her and more harm. If I bailed Marcus out, if I let him off the hook again, I'd be choosing him over her, again. And I couldn't live with that. Not anymore. The messages kept coming. Regina, now furious. You better fix this before Mama has another panic attack. Another cousin chimed in. Damn, Renee, you really changed. I didn't reply. I turned my phone over, screen down, and stared at the wall behind Patrice. My ears were hot, my throat dry, but I didn't cry. I'd done enough crying. What I felt now wasn't sadness, it was anger with a direction. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing the right thing, even if no one else saw it that way. Even if my own mama said I was a failure. I wasn't failing. I was finally standing up. I was choosing someone who'd been discarded, someone who didn't have a mother fighting for her. I was choosing Leah, and I was choosing myself, too. My integrity, my peace, my damn sanity. As I gathered up the papers, sliding them back into neat stacks, Patrice finally spoke. You sure you're ready for what's coming after this? I looked her in the eye and said, No, but I'm doing it anyway. That was the truth. I wasn't ready for the fallout, for the calls, the gossip, the way my family would twist this into betrayal, but I was ready to stop lying to myself. I was ready to stop enabling a grown man who hadn't shown an ounce of remorse. I was ready to protect someone who needed me. By the time I stood up and grabbed my coat, I wasn't shaking anymore. My hands were steady. I slipped my phone into my purse without checking the notifications. I knew what they'd say. I just didn't care. I had picked a side, and I wasn't turning back. The clipboard at the nurse's station felt heavier than it should have. I held the pen like it might snap in my fingers. Another form, another signature. Transfer to a private unit. Consent for procedures, billing authorization. I kept writing my name over and over until it didn't look like mine anymore. The nurse smiled at me softly and asked if I wanted a copy. I nodded, barely hearing her. My focus kept drifting back to Leah, just a few doors down, still quiet, still too still. I slid the forms back to the nurse, but my hand lingered on the counter. It wasn't just paperwork. It felt like I was signing away generations of silence. I heard the elevator ding, and when I looked up, there was Denise, Leah's mama, stepping off with tired eyes and a dress that looked like it had seen one too many funerals. She spotted me instantly, and I could see the questions coming before she opened her mouth. Her steps were fast, her face set. I braced myself. We stepped into the family room, just the two of us. It was small and cold, with bad lighting and even worse chairs. Denise didn't sit. She stayed standing across from me, arms crossed, and she didn't waste time. "Why didn't you see what was happening?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut deep. She called me Renee, crying, told me the gas got shut off in January, said Marcus was spending everything, and you just kept giving him money. You bought him that truck while she was shivering under 2 blankets. I couldn't answer at first. My throat felt like it had locked shut. She paced once, then looked me dead in the face. She told me she tried to talk to you. She said you always told her, he's under pressure, he just needs time. And right then, I heard my own mother's voice in my head. Every time my daddy came home smelling like liquor, every time he scared us or humiliated her, she'd say the same thing. He's under pressure, he just needs time. The words hit me so hard I almost sat down. I finally forced my mouth to move. "I was wrong," I said. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. "Denise, I didn't see it. Or maybe I didn't let myself see it. But I see it now, and I'm not covering for him anymore." She looked at me for a long time. Her face didn't soften, not right away. I told her about the party, about the girls, the drugs, the video. I told her about the notebook I found, Leah's writing, the ring, the bills, the things I should have asked about but didn't. Denise sat down slowly. She covered her mouth with her hand and let out this sound, half sob, half sigh. Her body slumped like everything she'd been carrying finally caught up to her. And then, after a long pause, she reached across the table and took my hand. "So, what are you going to do now?" she asked. Her voice was calmer but still sharp. And that was the question that mattered most. Not what I knew, not what I missed, what I was going to do about it now that I finally faced the truth. That question settled in my chest like a stone. What was I going to do now? I squeezed her hand back and said, "Everything I can." And I meant it. I was done pretending. I told her I was going to speak to every doctor on Leah's care team, every nurse, every social worker, and make sure they all knew Marcus had no business making any decisions. That I had the power of attorney now, and I wasn't just going to sign papers. I was going to speak. Out loud. No more secrets. No more quiet shame. No more protecting men while women like Leah suffer in silence. Denise just nodded. We sat there a moment, both of us breathing slow, sharing the same kind of heartbreak, different versions of the same story. Women keeping the peace, covering the mess, passing down silence like it was inheritance. I decided that was going to end with me. I left the family room and went straight to the case manager's office. I told her everything, what I'd seen, what I'd found, what Marcus had done. I told her Leah wasn't safe with him, not physically, not emotionally, not financially. I gave her the POA paperwork and asked her to update Leah's file immediately. I didn't hold anything back. When the social worker arrived, I told her too. I showed her photos of the house. I mentioned the unpaid bills, the missed appointments. I didn't sugarcoat a thing. Every time I said it out loud, It got a little easier. Every time I heard my own voice naming what Marcus did, the guilt lost some of its grip. I was still ashamed, but it didn't control me. It didn't silence me. I felt something rising underneath the shame, something stronger. Not rage, not pride. Just clarity. The truth was no longer something to tiptoe around. It was mine to hold, mine to use. By the time I walked back into Leah's room, it was late afternoon. Her breathing was steadier. Her color looked a little better. I sat down next to her and gently brushed her hair away from her face. She didn't wake up, but I talked to her anyway. "I did what I should have done a long time ago," I said softly. I told the truth. I stayed there for a while, just holding her hand. I knew there'd be fallout. Marcus would find out. The family would start circling with their judgments, their fake concern. But I didn't care. Not like I used to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix someone else's mess quietly. I was standing in it, owning my part, and doing what needed to be done. My guilt was still there, but now it had company, strength, direction, and something like hope. The chair in the hospital lobby felt like it was made of cement, hard and cold beneath me. I shifted my weight, trying to get comfortable, but nothing helped. I was scrolling through emails, one from the locksmith confirming the new security system at the townhouse, another from the dealership finalizing the sale of the truck Marcus had begged me to co-sign for. Everything was moving. Everything was changing. I was making sure of it. The sliding doors at the front opened with a hiss, and I looked up without thinking. That's when I saw him. Marcus. His clothes were wrinkled and stained, and he walked like his body was heavier than it should be. His eyes found mine instantly, and he picked up his pace, heading toward me like I was still his soft place to land. But I wasn't that anymore. Not for him. "Ma," he said, already out of breath. "I'm so sorry. They set me up. It wasn't even my stuff. I was just blowing off steam. You know how I get when I'm stressed about Leah." His voice cracked just enough to sound real. I didn't say a word. I let him keep talking. I wasn't thinking straight. "You know me. God, I hate seeing her like this. I didn't know it was that bad. I should have been there. But I'm here now, right? That's what matters. I'm here now." His eyes were already wet. He kept glancing around the room like he expected someone to step in and defend him. I sat still, quiet. I waited until his mouth stopped moving, until his excuses dried up in the back of his throat. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I slid it across the table toward him. His hands hovered over it, confused. I didn't rush him. He opened it and saw the first document. The deed, now under Leah's name only. The second, paperwork removing him from my business accounts. Then my updated will, which no longer mentioned him at all. And finally, a printed email from the locksmith with confirmation of the new locks and security cameras, registered in my name, installed under my direction. Marcus stared at the papers, blinking like they were in another language. "Ma, what is this?" he asked. "Why are you doing this? You're cutting me out?" I didn't answer. He stood up too fast, the chair scraping against the tile. His hands were shaking. "You can't be serious. I'm your son." His voice was rising, but I still didn't move. Then he dropped. Right there in the middle of the hospital lobby, he fell to his knees in front of me and grabbed at my hands. The whole lobby went quiet. Nurses looked over from the desk. A man pushing a food cart slowed down. I felt the weight of every eye on me. My son was crying, snot and sweat mixing on his face, begging me, saying, "Please, Ma, just give me one more chance. Don't do this. I'll get it together. I'll go to rehab. I'll apologize to Leah. I'll do anything. You know I love her. I love you. I just messed up. Please, please." His hands were squeezing mine like he could drag the old version of me back out, the one who always bailed him out. But I stayed still. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt, but I didn't let it show. I leaned down just enough for him to hear me clearly and said, "You can visit Leah only if the doctors allow it, if you're clean. And I won't be giving you a single dollar. I won't be rescuing you from this, not this time." He stared at me like I had slapped him. "So that's it?" he whispered. "After everything?" I pulled my hands out of his grip, stood up, and straightened my jacket. "No," I said. "That's the beginning." And then I walked. I walked away from my own son while he sat on the floor calling out after me. "Ma, please." His voice cracked into a sob. It felt like ripping off my own skin, like tearing away a piece of me I had carried since the day he was born. My legs were heavy, but I didn't stop. I made it to the elevator and pressed the button with a shaky finger. When the doors closed, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I just stood there, staring at my reflection in the mirrored wall, seeing someone I didn't fully recognize yet, but someone I didn't hate. When I got back to Leah's room, the machines beeped softly in rhythm with her breath. She was still asleep, still fighting, but her face looked calmer than it had the night before. I sat down beside her and took her hand gently in mine. It was warmer now. The color was slowly coming back to her skin. I rubbed her fingers between mine and whispered, "I did it." I didn't explain. I didn't have to. Sitting there, I knew exactly who I had chosen. Leah, the woman he left behind, the woman I failed once, but wouldn't fail again. And maybe, in some way, I had chosen me too. The version of me who didn't just survive motherhood, but finally started healing from it. I watched Leah's chest rise and fall and realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. I was proud of the woman I was becoming, even if it came at the cost of letting go of the son I once knew. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Chicago, the one I'd cleaned and wiped 100 times, but still had a scratch in the corner from Marcus dragging a toy truck too hard when he was 5. My coffee had gone cold. I wasn't even drinking it, just holding the mug to keep my hands busy. The silence was thick, but it didn't last. The front door swung open without a knock, just like always, and Mama came in like a thundercloud, Regina right behind her, arms folded and face already twisted. I didn't say anything. I just looked at them both and waited. Mama didn't waste a second. "You sent your only child to jail?" she snapped, as if I'd handed Marcus over to the police personally. "You think that makes you strong? That makes you cruel." I opened my mouth, but she talked over me. "I would have never turned my back on your daddy, no matter what he did. A real wife, a real mother, knows how to cover for a man. That's what you do when you love your family." I blinked. Regina chimed in with, "You cursed your own son, Renee. You cut your own blood out like he's nothing." Her voice was dripping with disappointment, like I'd spat on the family name. My stomach twisted. I felt 12 years old again, standing barefoot in this same kitchen, watching Mama cry over a broken plate while Daddy slept it off on the couch. Regina had always been the favorite, the obedient one, the one who never questioned why Mama kept taking him back. I stared at them, my throat tight, my palms sweating. Every part of me wanted to shrink, to go quiet, to make peace. That's what I'd done my whole life, swallowed my own voice to keep the room from exploding, but not this time. "You want to talk about loyalty?" I said, standing up. My voice was calm, but sharp. "Leah's in the hospital, on tubes, barely breathing. Marcus threw a party while she was dying. There were drugs in the house, girls, laughter, like she didn't exist. You want to tell me what part of that I was supposed to defend?" Mama's face dropped, just for a second, but she pulled it right back together. Regina shook her head like I was lying. "You didn't see her," I said. "She looked like a ghost." And I found a notebook. Leah wrote down everything he did. He drained her paycheck, sold her grandma's ring, left her freezing, and my voice cracked. I helped. I gave him money. I covered for him. And I won't do it anymore. Mama raised her hand like she was going to wave it all away. "Renee, we don't air our dirty laundry. That's family business." I stepped closer to the sink, gripping the edge of the counter. "Family business? You mean the same way you told me to wear long sleeves to church after Daddy hit me? The same way you told me to lie to the school counselor? To be quiet for the sake of the family?" The words came out of me fast, like they'd been waiting in a box for decades, and I finally kicked the lid open. The air in the kitchen shifted, thick, uncomfortable. Mama stared at me like I'd broken a sacred rule. Regina's mouth parted, but no words came. I could see the panic in their eyes, not because I'd said something wrong, but because I'd said something true. We'd all known it. We just never dared speak it out loud, and I had. I said the thing we weren't supposed to say. The silence stretched so long it became a wall. Mama turned her face away like I'd slapped her. Regina finally spoke, her voice shaky. "You're still wrong for turning your back on your own." I looked at her and said, "No, I'm finally turning toward the truth." She didn't respond. They gathered their things, what little they'd brought, and left without hugging me, without saying goodbye. The door shut behind them harder than necessary. I stood there, still holding the counter, trying to catch my breath. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just raw. Like every nerve had been peeled open. The tears didn't come. Not then. There was something steadier under the pain. Like I'd cut a cord that had been choking me for years, and now I was finally breathing again. It hurt, but it was clean. I sat back down at the table. The coffee was stone cold, but I drank it anyway. I looked around my kitchen, my space, and I saw how much of my life had been shaped by silence, by protecting people who never protected me, by mistaking survival for strength. And I was done with that. I wasn't a traitor for telling the truth. I wasn't cruel for saying what happened. I was honest, and that had to count for something. I didn't know if Mama or Regina would ever come around, but I knew I couldn't go back to pretending. Not now, not after everything. The script had been torn in half. And even if I stood alone on this new page, I wasn't going to fold it up and hide it. That day, something shifted in me. I'd spent most of my life following rules that were built on fear. Keep your voice down, keep your head low, keep the men in your life comfortable. But Leah's face, her still body in that hospital bed, reminded me that silence doesn't save anyone. It only protects the ones doing the damage. By the time the sun dipped behind the rooftops outside my window, I wasn't the same woman who opened the door that morning. I had told the truth, and whether Mama or Regina ever spoke to me again didn't matter as much as it used to. I was no longer playing along. I was standing in the light, and I wasn't going back. The sound of my name, raspy, barely above a whisper, cut through the hum of machines and snapped me awake like a slap. "Renee!" I looked up fast, my neck stiff from sleeping wrong in that damn recliner. Leah was staring at me, her eyelids trembling, her eyes glassy and full of confusion. I froze. For a second, I couldn't even speak. Her lips were dry and cracked, her voice thin, but she was awake. Really awake. "Hey, baby," I finally said, scooting in close, reaching for her hand. It was warm. Weak, but warm. "You're at the hospital. You're safe. They've been taking good care of you." Her eyes moved slowly, like she was trying to figure out if she was dreaming. "You've been asleep for a while, but you're doing better now." She didn't respond, but she blinked, and that was enough. I just kept talking, soft and steady, telling her she was safe now, that I wasn't going anywhere. I wanted to cry, but I knew if I did, it would scare her. So I just held her hand, leaned close, and stayed with her while she tried to come back to herself. In the days that followed, she grew stronger, inch by inch. She could keep her eyes open longer, say a few words at a time, even smile a little when the nurses joked with her. But then the questions started. Simple at first. "What day is it? How long?" Then deeper. "Where's Marcus? Why's there a security guard? What happened to the house?" I felt my stomach twist every single time. I'd been waiting for these questions, but they still hit like punches. I told her what I could at first, without dropping too much too fast. "Marcus isn't here right now. The hospital just wants to keep things quiet around you." But she kept pushing. She's always been smart like that. "Did he visit? Did he do something?" I nodded slowly, sat beside her with both hands around hers, and said, "When you're ready, I'll tell you everything. No lies." She looked at me long and hard, then nodded back. That's when I knew I couldn't protect her with silence. I had to protect her with truth. It was late afternoon when I finally sat down and told her. The sun was coming through the window, just enough to warm the edge of the bed, and she was sipping on ice chips, the only thing her throat could handle. I started with the party, The girls, the video. Her face didn't change at first, just went still. I told her how I found the pill bottle still sealed, her name on it, sitting in spilled beer. I told her about the white powder on the coffee table, the trash piled up, and the calendar with boys' night. Written across the date she was taken by ambulance. I showed her the paperwork, how I'd put the house in her name, froze the accounts, made sure Marcus couldn't touch a thing. She stared at the papers in my hands, her own fingers trembling a little. Then she started crying. Soft at first, then harder. I reached out, and she pulled away. Not from me, just from the weight of it all. "I'm sorry," she said through the tears. "I should have left sooner." That nearly broke me. "No," I said. "I'm the one who's sorry. I saw things. I ignored them. I kept trying to believe he'd grow out of it, that he'd wake up and be better. But he didn't. And while I was making excuses, you were going through hell." She shook her head, wiping her face with the sleeve of her gown. "I thought maybe I was crazy," she whispered. "He'd make me feel like it was all in my head." I nodded, eyes stinging. "That's what people like him do. They make you doubt your own pain." I took her hand again. "You're not crazy. You're not weak. You survived something that should have never happened. And I'm not going to let it happen again." We sat there in silence, both of us exhausted in different ways. There was so much grief between us, but also something new, something beginning to bloom in the cracks. Later that evening, just as the nurse came in to check her vitals, Leah turned to me and said, "If I go back home, I don't want him there." Her voice was stronger than it had been all day. Not angry, not panicked, just firm, like a line had been drawn. I looked her in the eye and nodded. "He won't be," I said. "That's your home now. Your name's on the deed, and the locks are changed." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't cry from sadness. It was relief. Something settled between us in that moment. A promise, a choice. She was choosing herself. And I was choosing to stand beside her, not behind Marcus. I didn't care what the rest of the family thought or what they'd whisper behind my back. That didn't matter anymore. Before I left for the night, I kissed her forehead, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, and whispered, "Rest now. You're safe." She gave me the smallest smile, her eyes already starting to close. As I stepped out of her room and into the hallway, I felt a deep ache in my chest, but it wasn't regret this time. It was something heavier, but cleaner, like my heart had been broken open, but not shattered. I had failed her once, but not again. She was alive. She was awake. And she was choosing a future where she didn't shrink to fit someone else's comfort. I was proud of her. And quietly, I was proud of myself too. The light from the kitchen window hit just right that morning, landing across the table where Leah had laid out her paints and half-finished canvases. I stood in the doorway of the townhouse, sipping my tea, watching her slowly make her way from the couch to the kitchen using her walker. Her steps were still unsteady, but she was moving, on her own. That small detail gave me more pride than I could explain. The colors from her latest piece, a bold splash of red and orange across thick brushstrokes, caught the light and made the whole space feel warmer. It looked nothing like the house I'd walked into all those months ago. This house was hers now, quiet, safe, full of art and soft blankets instead of empty bottles and excuses. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another unknown number. I didn't even have to open it. I knew. Marcus. Again. He'd been trying for weeks. Different numbers, different voices in the voicemails. Sometimes angry, sometimes pitiful. Always needing. "I'm starving, Ma. You took everything from me. Just $20, I swear I'll fix it." I didn't listen to the end. I never did. I walked out onto the porch for some air, but I barely made it halfway before I heard the shouting. My body went stiff. I knew that voice. Marcus. He was across the street, pacing fast, yelling loud enough for the neighbors to come out and peek through their curtains. "Leah," he screamed. "You're my wife. You can't just erase me. Renee, open this door." He stormed up the walkway and started pounding on the front door, both fists slamming into it like it had done him wrong. "You turned her against me," he shouted. "You poisoned her against her own husband." My hands started to shake, my heart pounding too fast. For a second, my body remembered an old fear, of loud voices, of male anger, of what happened when women didn't give in. But I stayed rooted. I didn't flinch this time. Leah was standing behind me, her walker trembling under her hands. But she didn't hide. Her face was pale, but she didn't run. I turned to her. "Go sit down," I said. She nodded and backed into the kitchen. I picked up the phone and called the police, my voice steady, even though my blood was racing. "There's a man trespassing at my property, yelling, pounding on my door. His name is Marcus Coleman. I have a restraining request pending. He's been warned." They asked if he had a weapon. "Not that I can see," I said, glancing through the peephole where he kept pacing and shouting. I didn't wait for the sirens. I locked the door, closed the blinds, and went back to sit beside Leah. She was breathing hard but steady, her fists clenched in her lap. "He won't come in," I told her. "Not now. Not ever again." She nodded without saying anything, but her eyes were glassy. I could tell she was holding back tears. I reached over and put a hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into it just enough to let me know she trusted me. I kept my eyes on the front door until the police lights reflected on the wall. The knock was quick, 2 officers, firm, calm. I opened the door just enough to talk, pointed them to where Marcus was now sitting on the curb, still muttering. They asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said, "I want him removed. I want peace in this house." They nodded and walked him to the patrol car. Marcus turned around one last time and looked at me. His face twisted, not just with anger, but with disbelief, like he couldn't believe I'd really closed the door on him. "You're choosing her over your own blood," he shouted. I didn't respond. I just shut the door and locked it again. That sound, the click of the lock, felt like a release I didn't even know I'd been waiting for. I turned around and leaned my back against the door, my hands finally letting go of the tension I'd been gripping all day. When the car pulled away, I crumpled onto the couch and let the sobs come. Not polite ones, not quiet ones. Full body, snot and tears sobbing. Not just for Marcus, for the version of me that had let so much go unchallenged. For the years I'd trained myself to shrink and nod and say yes just to keep men calm. For the woman who thought being loyal meant being silent. Leah sat beside me. She didn't say anything. She just reached for my hand and held it, then slowly laid her head on my shoulder. We cried together. Not like victims, like women who had survived something and weren't pretending it hadn't broken them. We didn't say a word. We didn't need to. The sound of our breathing, slowing in sync, was enough. That night, I went through my phone and blocked every number he had used, one by one, no hesitation. Then I wrote down a rule on a sticky note and stuck it on the fridge, bold black ink. If saving him costs me Leah, or myself, I'm not doing it. I stared at those words for a long time. I knew people would call me heartless. I knew Mama and Regina would say I'd gone too far. But I also knew the truth. I hadn't abandoned Marcus. He had abandoned us both the day he chose himself over her life, over decency, over love. I turned off my phone, made a cup of tea, and sat in the armchair while Leah painted in the next room. The house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear, the kind that comes from peace. And this time, I didn't feel guilty for choosing it. The heat was climbing off the sidewalk in waves, that kind of sticky, breathless heat that makes your clothes cling and your skin itch. I was walking back from the dollar store with a plastic bag digging into my fingers, filled with cheap paintbrushes, a few tubes of acrylics, and a sketch pad Leah had pointed out last week. Nothing fancy, but she'd light up over the smallest things lately, and I wanted to bring her something that felt like progress. I was halfway across the parking lot when I saw him. Bent over a tire at the corner car wash, soaked in soap and sweat, scrubbing so hard I could see the red in his knuckles from across the lot. Marcus. My body froze. For a second, I stepped forward, like some automatic part of me still wanted to go to him, fix something, soothe. But then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't need to read it, but I did anyway. "Ma, please, I'm starving. Just $20. The guilt punched through my chest on cue, dragging up old instincts. He's your son. He's struggling. You can't let him fall too far. But it didn't hit the same way it used to. Not after the hospital. Not after the notebook. Not after hearing my mother's voice on repeat in my head saying, "Cover it, protect him, be loyal." My thumb hovered over the screen, and for a moment, I just stood there. I watched Marcus rinse the tire, still hunched, still in that same cycle he swore he'd break. I didn't reply. I pressed block, slid the phone back into my purse, and turned away. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry, just tired. But sure, I was sure. When I got home, Leah was by the window, sitting on the wide bench we added with extra pillows, her walker nearby. The late sun was pouring through the glass and bouncing off her paintings, scattering color across the floor like little pieces of joy. She didn't even turn to look at me before saying, "Hey, Mama," like it was the most normal thing in the world. That word, Mama, still caught me off guard sometimes, but I didn't correct her. I smiled and walked over, placed the bag beside her, and sat down. She peeked in, pulled out the paints, and whispered, "Thank you," like I'd handed her something fragile. We didn't talk for a while. We didn't need to. Just sitting there, breathing the same air, watching the way light played against the buildings outside, felt like more peace than I'd had in years. Later that night, we sat at the kitchen table going over her physical therapy schedule. She had a follow-up on Thursday, another session next Monday. Patrice had sent over a draft of the paperwork for the scholarship fund we were putting together in Leah's name, and I read through it slowly while she added notes in the margins with a purple pen. The whole time, I kept thinking how strange it was to feel this grounded, like I had finally landed in my own life instead of constantly running damage control. There was still grief sitting inside me, still fear, still a knot of shame I hadn't fully untangled. But now, those things had company. They weren't in charge. There was room in my chest for something else, something quieter, something steady. I didn't tell Leah about seeing Marcus. Not that night. Maybe not ever. It wasn't that I wanted to keep secrets. It was just that I was learning how to protect what mattered without dragging old pain into the light just to prove something. She had already lost enough. I didn't want her peace disrupted by a man who chose chaos again and again. The truth was, I didn't feel responsible for him anymore. I felt responsible for her, and for myself, for the version of me that was finally getting to exist outside of crisis. I no longer felt like a mother trying to keep the family from breaking. I felt like a woman who had finally stepped into her own power, even if that meant standing on broken ground. By the time I went to bed, Leah was still painting by the window, music low in the background, humming to herself like she had all the time in the world. And maybe she did. Maybe we both did. Finally. I climbed into bed and turned off the lamp, letting the dark wrap around me. For once, I didn't check my phone again. I knew there wouldn't be another text. I had blocked him, fully and truly, and in doing that, I had made space for something else. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I wasn't going back. I was done covering for men who hurt, done making myself small to keep someone else comfortable. I was becoming the kind of woman who could protect what mattered, and this time, that included me. If you stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to what I went through and how I chose to stand up for myself and Leah. Before you go, please let me know in the comments which city or country you're watching from. I really want to see where my story is reaching. If this touched you in any way, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the other real-life stories I've shared, and the ones that are still coming. Your support means more than you know and helps keep this space alive for women like us who are finally speaking up. With love and respect, thank you for being here with me today.